For individuals that are trying to determine whether or not they can retire, or they're just trying to determine the dollar amount that they need to retire or at least scale back working, being a certified financial planner and doing retirement projections for clients for over 20 years, sometimes I can come to that answer in under 1 minute by asking someone just a handful of questions. And that's the exercise I'm going to go through with you today, so you can run this exercise for yourself and see what kind of shape you're in retirement-wise. Hello everyone, I am Michael Ruger. I am the managing partner of Greenbush Financial Group, and today I'm going to be running you through my 1-minute retirement drill, or kind of back of the napkin math that I use to assist individuals kind of on the spot to determine whether or not they are in good shape from a retirement standpoint. I'm doing this video now because this literally just happened last night where I was at a business event. Someone pulled me aside and said, "Hey Mike, I want to get some time on your calendar. I'm going to be retiring next year, and I just want to see what type of shape I'm in and can I retire comfortably?" And to their surprise, instead of doing this full-fledged financial plan, in under a minute, I was just able to ask them a few questions and determine whether or not they were good to retire the following year. I'm first going to give you some context behind some of the questions that I asked this individual, but then I'm actually going to run it as if it was the conversation last night, and you'll see that it's under a minute. The first question that I always ask is surrounding their annual expenses. So I kind of say, hey, do you have a good handle as to what you expect your expenses to be when you retire? Let's say it's $5,000 a month, then you're going to need $60,000 per year after tax. And then my second question immediately after that is, do you expect those expenses to change dramatically during retirement? Some people say, yeah, I have a mortgage and eventually that's going to be paid off, or yeah, I want to travel more when I'm in retirement, or we have a house renovation coming up. So there's going to be major fluctuations in the expenses outside of the norm. We need to know about that. The next series of questions I will ask is about income streams that will be coming in retirement. Some individuals have pensions that we could say, okay, you're going to have $20,000 a year coming in from the state pension. Most individuals are going to have Social Security. So what are the Social Security amounts that they're expecting to receive every single year? The third and final set of questions that I ask is surrounding their assets. So how much have they saved for the retirement nest egg? And what we typically assign is a 4% assumed rate of return, which is nice and conservative. So if someone has $1 million and we say, hey, that $1 million should be able to produce hopefully 4% rate of return per year without depleting the principal. So I can say of that $1 million, that should kick off about $40,000 per year in pre-tax income to you every year. That's the asset piece. So the three main categories are expenses, fixed income streams that are coming in, and assets. So now I'm going to pull all these pieces together and I'm going to model for you how this 1-minute conversation works to determine whether or not someone can retire. So Joe comes up to me during this event. He says, hey, Mike, thinking about retiring next year. Want to meet with you to see if it's possible. Here come the questions, and let's start the 1-minute timer. Joe, that's great that you're going to be retiring next year. So do you have a good handle as to what your monthly or annual expenses are going to be in retirement? Oh, they're going to be about $5,000 per month. Okay, that's about $60,000 per year. Are you married? Okay, are you and your wife both going to have any pensions in there? Okay, no pensions. Are you both going to receive Social Security? Okay, do you know what the amounts are? $30,000 a piece? Okay, so for Social Security, you're going to have $60,000 per year. What do you guys have asset-wise? Oh, you guys have like $1 million? So $1 million, let's just assume a 4% rate of return. So you guys take all the interest off that and leave the principal every year. So that's another $40,000 you receive from your assets. So Social Security, $60,000. The interest off your assets is another $40,000. So I got $100,000 worth of pre-tax income. We got to take taxes out of that. So maybe that gets you down to $85,000 in after-tax income. But you said your expenses were $60,000. So you have about $25,000 more after tax than you're going to need. You're probably in pretty good shape. I didn't check the timer, but I'm pretty sure that was either under a minute or close to a minute. Now, when I do this back of the napkin math, I always like there to be a good sized gap between the after-tax expenses and the after-tax income out of the gates because of something called inflation. So the inflation is just the price of everything going up every year. So if someone has $60,000 in after-tax expenses and they have exactly $60,000 in after-tax income, the problem is if their income is not growing with inflation, which usually it isn't, the after-tax expenses potentially go up by 3% every year for inflation. So if you're retiring early, let's say 55, that's $60,000 could easily become $75,000. And let's say 15 years from now, which all of a sudden you were good out of the gates, but you weren't further down the road. So I always want to make sure when I'm doing these quick estimates that there's enough of a gap that there's some room for inflation in the first 10 or 20 years of retirement. Now, if I go through this exercise with someone and they're right on the line, or let's say there isn't enough to essentially just live off the interest off the assets, that can be completely okay, because living off the interest of the assets means, in my example, that $1 million lives forever and then your beneficiaries inherit it. A lot of individuals, the whole purpose is you save this money, you're going to spend down some of it in retirement. But this back of the napkin quick exercise, if you tell me you're going to be spending down assets or inflation is going to be catching up to you, that's when we have to do more formal projections, because we got to make sure you're not spending through your assets too quickly. Now, when we're doing retirement planning for individuals, we do not do just retirement plans for individuals that we're not sure about. Even the people that have more than enough, it then becomes an optimization game saying, we can design a plan so you're drawing out of assets in a certain order that you pay as little tax as possible from the time you retire all the way through life expectancy. So essentially there's more left over for you, or there's more essentially left over for your beneficiaries. We're talking about things like optimal Social Security filing strategy, Roth conversions of retirement, Medicare premiums. And the other thing that I feel like people need a lot of help with is actually on the expense side. So I tend to see people underestimate their annual expenses, because they might say, well, Mike, my expenses are $4,000 a month. I don't have a car payment right now. But then my question is, well, aren't you going to buy another car at some point? And a lot of people are like, well, yeah, well, just like, well, that's not in your annual expenses, or the maintenance on your house. Like, I'm going to need a roof in 5 years. That's going to be 20 grand. Is that in that $4,000 per month annual expense number that you gave me? These are all the things we have to account for as we're planning for people for the next 15, 20, 25 years. I hope this information was helpful. This is just a nice back of the napkin math kind of way to see either how you're doing if you're getting close to retirement, looking at your expenses, looking at your fixed income stream, looking at what you expect your assets to produce from an income standpoint to answer the question, can I retire? For individuals that are planning more for the future, what is the asset number I'm going to kind of need? Maybe using that 4% return rule if you want your assets to live in perpetuity. If you want to get more granular with spend down and whatnot, then that's where that financial plan truly comes into play to make sure that you have enough. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at greenbushfinancial.com. Thank you.